Good afternoon. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Matthew Darius. I am your SEDC Executive Director. Also on the call today, we have SEDC Associate Holly Hart. This session is being recorded and we'll have a replay for you available later this afternoon on our YouTube channel, so please check that out. Like and subscribe if you would. It would do us a great service for us to extend the reach of our entire training library that's on there. We're going to dive right into today's topic, which is Property Data Pulse Insights Shaping Economic Development. On the call today, we have Ron Bertasi, CEO of GIS WebTech, who ran the first annual Property Data Pulse survey. He and his team are here to give you the actionable intelligence you'll need on key insights like technology, property staging, and integrating workforce data to better engage site selectors and benefit your communities. Please hold all your questions till the end. We'll have a Q&A session where you can ask absolutely everything and anything that may come up during today's presentation. With that out of the way, Ron, it's your show.
Thank you, Matthew. Well, thanks for joining us, everyone. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. I'm Ron Bertasi. As Matthew said, I'm a co-founder and CEO of GIS WebTech. I'd like to have each of our team members who are presenting today go ahead and introduce themselves as well.
Good afternoon, Michael Cleary, Chief Operating Officer, along with Ron, co-founder of GIS WebTech.
Nice to be with you all today. I'm Kathy Becker, and I'm the Director of Customer Success at GIS WebTech.
Hi, it's so nice to meet everyone. I'm Melanie Moore. I'm the Director of Product Marketing with GIS WebTech.
Okay, great. Let's go ahead and jump into today's discussion. The goal of today's webinar is to give you very specific actions, specific detailed steps that you can take that will drive engagement by businesses and site selectors. I want to be clear about this. These are actual steps that are in use by your peers today. In other words, they're not hypothetical, they're not untested, they're not based on our gut instinct or what marketing gurus say you should be doing. They're not even based on common sense or the latest marketing fad. These are proven things, and we'll show you today the data underlying the proof. So they're supported by real-world data and analysis, and we'll show you conclusively that they drive results. Now, these points are going to come from two sources. The first is the Property Data Pulse survey that we completed this summer. This was the first ever survey on property data usage by economic developers. No one had ever done this before. The responses came from economic developers across the US and Canada, including EDOs of all sizes, all types. About half the respondents, interestingly, were generalists in economic development, and about half were specialists. What's a specialist? Well, they might be a researcher or responsible for sites and buildings. Now, we did this summer for the first time, and the response was really overwhelming, just huge interest in this. So we committed, at the request of a bunch of clients and others, to perform this survey every year. That's a big advantage because in the future, we'll be able to see trends over time, as well as the data that we'll show you today and similar data. Now, you can participate. We would love to have you participate. The more results we get, the better. You can sign up on our website to participate next year. Once you sign up, we'll take it from there and email you next year to get you going. And if you participate each year, you get a free copy of the detailed report. So we have produced a detailed report with all the survey results, plus some other nuggets we'll show you in a minute. And those who participate in the survey as an incentive to participate get a free copy of that report. If you don't participate in the survey, you can still download an executive summary of that report, and that's available for free on our website. So please feel free to do that. All right, that was the first source of the analysis we're going to show you today. The second is detailed work we did on interactions with properties on EDO websites. No one's ever done this before. The technology is now in place to allow us to do this. We were the first to do so. What did we do? Well, we analyzed over 500,000 interactions by site selectors with property listings on economic development websites. So we looked at about 250 EDO websites, and downloaded the data, analyzed it. That analysis is ongoing. In other words, we're going to show you today are final and conclusive, but only the first set of results. We have additional work we want to do to get to more detailed results. Okay, so these two things form the basis of the story and the data you're going to see today. Okay, let me hand it off to Michael.
Great, thank you, Ron. So this is a survey result. And does your organization include property listings on its website? So you can see overwhelmingly 85% do. But what's interesting also is that 15% that don't, 11% plan to. So that really is a key takeaway. And it really is a best practice. You've often heard that no product, no project. And if you don't have a project, you can't win it. Offering property data is critical for success. So 96% of EDOs will offer property data or plan to. Next slide, please, Ron. So this is a follow-up to the previous slide about providing property data on your website. There could be an assumption about the types of organizations of that 15% that don't do that. But in this particular slide, we take away some myths about the types of organizations that don't provide property data. And you can see here, we've segmented it, 1 to 4 employees, organization size, 79% provide property data. And you can see up to 20%, which are the larger size organizations, they have 82%. Now this averages out to the 85%. This is really good to see. So the key takeaway is EDOs of all sizes include property listings on their website. Next slide, Ron. Okay, so step 1 of 6, key takeaway. Overwhelmingly, economic developers believe in providing the value providing property listings. I think that's ubiquitous in the marketplace. And we saw that from the data, from the survey. EDOs of all sizes do so or will continue to do so or planning to. Now, the last bullet here is really important. If you don't provide property listings, then you cannot get the interactions that we're going to share with you in the next few slides. Ron, next slide.
Okay, thanks, Michael. Okay, this one now should be Melanie.
Yes, I'll take over now. One of the questions we asked was, over the last year, what types of buildings have your business and site selector prospects been most interested in? And not surprisingly, industrial and distribution rose to the top. They remain the most popular, but what was surprising and very different from just a few years ago, we saw data centers are now very much in demand now. Next slide. Again, not surprisingly, when we asked about types of sites that business and site selector prospects have been most interested in, industrial and distribution again rose to the top, and again, in data centers were increasingly in demand as well. Next slide. We also asked about the size of existing buildings that prospects have been interested in. And large buildings remain in very high demand, which of course reflects the popularity of industrial and distribution centers, which do tend to be much larger buildings. And then we asked about site sizes. And this one was very interesting because it really runs the gamut. There was no size range that rose to the top. It's everything from small properties all the way up to those large 100-acre plus parcels. Next slide. So the analysis tells us that sites are much more engaging than buildings. Sites are actually twice as likely to be clicked on than buildings. And even though sites make up less than a third of all property listings, they constitute 60% of all the clicks, which we found very interesting. Next slide. So step 2 of 6, in summary, is we recommend to list all industrial and distribution buildings and focus on sites and your large buildings. And now I'd like to hand things back over to Michael.
Okay, thanks, Melanie. So just to reiterate on this one, sites generate twice as much engagement and all sites are in demand, even small ones. So focus on your sites, list them all. And while buildings of all sizes are in demand, the bigger buildings command more attention. So if possible, focus on those. Okay.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Melanie. Analysis of interactions. This is really important. This is insight. It's not based on a poll or survey. It's actual user behavior. And this is the gold standard in the marketplace of any market, is actual behavior. So Featured properties generate far more engagement than other properties. First bullet point, featured properties are 18 times as likely to be clicked than the average property. Pretty staggering. And then featured properties, well, they only make up 1.4% of property listings. They generate over 26% of all clicks. That is a tremendous insight and takeaway for any economic developer about how to get engaged with prospects, site selectors, business. Now, a featured property, if you can look at the image to the left, you can see a rectangular orange box. That is a featured property. And it's important to know that having a property featured, again, the numbers bear out, 18 times as likely to be clicked as the average property and represent 26% of all clicks. Next slide, Ron. So step 3 of 6, feature your best properties. Whether you have 5 properties, 50, 500, or 5,000 properties, not all properties represent equal value to your community. So featuring your very best properties, if you have 5, you put them at the top. Whether it's 50 or 500, 5,000, always feature your most valuable properties because that's going to drive the kind of interaction that you as an economic developer want for those particular properties. Ron, next slide.
Thanks, Michael. And just to reiterate what Michael's saying, it's that featured stamp you saw on those property thumbnails. That's what's driving that very high level of engagement. So to Michael's point, take your best properties, feature them, and that's going to drive engagement with them. You want to save that featured stamp for your best properties. Okay, Kathy?
Okay, thank you, Michael and Ron. We're heading back to our survey results. And the next question that we asked was, do you use technology to stage your properties in listings or outreach? Some of you may not be familiar with what we mean when we say stage your properties. So I'm going to share my screen to show you a couple of examples. There are multiple ways that you can make your properties stand out, and we call this staging. An example that you can see on your screen is a property that has property layers that are opened. It's got text added. They're highlighting different important nearby infrastructure, such as the airport and the runway. There's 3D buildings. So this is a great example of a property that has been staged with features that make it stand out. Without the features, it just looks like a piece of property. But with the features, really stands out, drives engagement with your properties. Here's another example of a staged property. And you can see here that the water mains, sewer, gravity mains are all included, as well as 3D buildings with this property. The information is clickable, so a user can click on the layers that open up and see important information. Keeps the guesswork out of site selection. This is another great example of a property that is staged. Here's a third example, just to give you another feeling of what a property can look like with additional text, layers highlighting where rail and high voltage power is included near the property, as well as a 3D building. Okay, Ron, if you would go back to the slideshow, I'm going to stop sharing.
Okay, thank you,
And
Kathy.
let's talk about the results of staging a property and what we found from properties that were staged. So you can see in the pie chart on the left that the vast majority think that staging is an attractive thing. 34% already do, 47% don't yet, but they plan to. So the key takeaway here from this question is that 81% of EDOs either currently stage their properties with 3D virtual buildings and other assets like I demonstrated, or they will soon. Next slide, please, Ron. Okay, so we wanted to dive a little deeper, and so we asked if they use technology to stage their properties for outreach, but we wanted to see based on self-reported tech savviness. So we asked the economic developers to self-report on how tech savvy they felt they were, from the most tech savvy to the least tech savvy. And you can see some really interesting data around how people view themselves as far as being tech savvy versus not, and whether or not they're staging properties. And a couple of the key takeaways are that all people, all economic developers that self-report as being tech savvy are now staging properties and making them available on their website. And that even those that don't consider themselves tech savvy, they plan to stage properties because they see the value. Next slide, Ron. Okay, so basically, an analysis of interactions of over 500,000 user interactions. We find that staging properties with 3D buildings is the single most important driver of engagement. So Michael talked about adding feature labels and how that's important for driving engagement, but the single most important driver of engagement is adding 3D buildings. Properties that are staged with 3D buildings are 20 times more likely to be clicked and 10 times more likely to be shared, either in direct links or QR codes. So it's a very key component of staging your properties is adding 3D buildings. Next slide, Ron. So in summary of step 4, staging your best sites with 3D virtual buildings and other assets like property layers and text calling out nearby assets are the most powerful way to drive engagement. A large majority of EDOs are now doing this or plan to do it soon. And all self-reported tech-savvy EDOs are using 3D virtual buildings. And even those who don't consider themselves very tech-savvy, they plan to do this soon. Ron?
Great, thank you, Kathy. Okay, so let's continue on with our discussion of survey results. We asked respondents if they share properties using one-click links and QR codes in their outreach to businesses. And outreach could be emails, it could be campaigns, it's any outbound activity. And just as with the previous question on staging properties, in this one, we also asked them their tech savviness, and they self-reported. So if we take a look at their answer to whether they're sharing properties with links and QR codes and slice it by their tech savviness, we get some pretty interesting results. We see that tech leaders are highly active in their use of sharing tools. 100% of them either use it or plan to. That's the top row. So 86% currently use it, 14% plan to, 100% between the two. As you move down the rows, you decrease in tech savviness, and not surprisingly, there is less use of outreach, including one-click links and QR codes. Okay, but most EDOs are trying to keep up. Most EDOs that are trying to keep up, that middle tier, middle couple of rows, those are using them or planning to use them as well. Okay, so unlike 3D virtual buildings, where even the least tech-savvy economic developers are planning to use them, in the case of links, that's less clear. The tech-savvy EDOs clearly use them. The least tech-savvy EDOs are less likely to use them. Okay, we continued with a similar question. Do you use analytics to track engagement with those properties, e.g. clicks on property listings, such that you can get insight of the sort we're presenting today on which properties and which activities drive the most interest? And this is a pretty interesting finding too, because although only 25% are currently using analytics, another 59% plan to. And only 16% said they don't have plans to. Now, why does this matter? Well, it's much like property staging with 3D buildings. There is tremendous interest in this, but the technology is in the early stages or relatively early stages of being adopted. So 25% have already adopted it. Another 59% will do so presumably soon. And so we see a total of 84% either adopting it or planning to adopt it quickly. So we also looked at this question, and we sliced it this time not by self-reported tech savviness, but rather by use of property staging. What does that mean? Well, you see the rows there. The first row are those EDOs who are staging properties. The second row is those who plan to, and the third row are those who are not and don't plan to. Not surprisingly, you see a pretty clear trend again. The EDOs that are staging properties tend to use analytics or plan to. About 3/4 of them either use them already or plan to. And that makes sense because these are the tech savvy EDOs generally. Those who aren't staging but plan to, 88% are using analytics or will. Only those who are not staging and don't plan to stage really aren't strong on analytics or plans to use analytics. Okay, and this again correlates with tech savviness. So the takeaway here is that use of analytics goes hand in hand with the use of property staging and therefore with tech savviness. Okay, so step 5 of our 6 actionable steps is use links, use QR codes in your campaigns and RFI responses, and use analytics to track results. So the tech leaders are already doing this. Heavy use of sharing tools like links and QR codes, as you saw earlier, heavy use of property staging. Analytics, like property staging, is growing rapidly, and a large majority of EDOs either use them today or plan to soon. Use of sharing tools and analytics correlates highly with property staging, as we mentioned. So those EDOs that are getting 20 times as many clicks by staging properties, guess what? They know that because they're using the analytics and they have insight into it and they see it. A tremendous advantage in marketing your properties. That allows them to adjust their properties, adjust their campaigns, adjust their RFI strategy to reflect which properties are actually getting the most interest. So huge insight from including these links in your outbound campaigns and RFIs and following the links with analytics to see the engagement you're getting. Okay, let's go back to our survey for building up to the last of our 6 steps. We asked how important it is to show workforce, demographic, infrastructure, incentives, other data like that integrated with the property listings. What did we mean by integrated with the property listings? We meant in the same simple, easy to use location, not as separate files or somewhere else on the website, but right there and available with the properties. And as you can see here, it's pretty obvious from the data, a large majority think it's critical or important to show this type of data and other supporting data integrated with your property listings. So 44%, nearly half, said this is mission critical, absolute must. Another 34% said it's important, we include it when we can. 20% said nice to have, and only 3% said it's not important at all. So clear consensus among your peers that integrating this type of data with your properties is crucial. Now, we took that answer and again sliced it by tech savviness. And what you see here is, I think, pretty intuitive and should make sense. Tech leaders, those that are reported as the most tech savvy, they place the highest priority on integrating this type of data with their property listings. The least tech savvy EDOs also value it highly. So 71% say it's important, another 14% said mission critical. So very, very large percentage. The EDOs in the middle, those that are struggling to keep up, they're a little more divided. But even in their case, nearly 2/3 still deem it critical and important. So the takeaway here is that no matter how tech savvy EDOs are, economic developers believe including this data with your properties is very important, even those that aren't particularly tech savvy. Okay, so we then asked in our survey, well, how does your organization present your property listings on your website? And we again sliced this, in this case, by tech savviness with some pretty interesting results. And we gave a series of options as the potential answers that respondents could select. And those are listed across the top of the table. So one option was to respond, we license a dedicated GIS app. A second option was we get a free GIS app from a partner, perhaps a regional or state organization. Third option is we use a simple plugin, a property viewer from a property data provider that has a listing and a map, but no supporting data like demographics. Fourth option is our web developer maintains a list for us on our website. Fifth is we maintain a list on our website ourselves. So we do the maintenance of the website listing ourselves as opposed to a web developer doing it. And then lastly, we link to a third-party site, meaning a user on our website can click and go to a third-party site to see properties that are filtered for our community. That could be a state economic development organization, for example. Now, what you see here is that tech-savvy EDOs overwhelmingly favor dedicated GIS apps. 83% use those. And the remaining 17% all use a simple plugin. So there are none that are using a simple list on their website, for example. So they overwhelmingly favor dedicated GIS apps. And in the middle two columns, similar story, 71 and 70% favor dedicated GIS apps. And EDOs that lag in tech, those who are self-reported as the least tech savvy, the bottom row, they tend to keep a simple property list on their website, either maintained by their web developer or by themselves. So they're the exception. Most EDOs believe in the use of a dedicated GIS app. The exception is the least tech savvy EDOs, where only 25% responded there. Okay, so this is the last of our 6 actionable steps. No worries, we're going to summarize these for you in a minute, all 6. But for this one, the actionable step is to use a purpose-built GIS app that integrates all of the requirements and makes it simple and easy to use for businesses and site selectors who come to your website. So you want something that's purpose-built for economic development, should have everything right in there that enables you to drive engagement. What are those things? Well, they're the things we mentioned in our previous steps: featuring your best properties, staging your best sites, including 3D virtual buildings, sharing links and QR codes, providing analytics on those links and QR codes and your listings as a whole, so that you can see which properties and which actions you take in engagement with your properties. And then include demographic, workforce, incentives, and similar data. All that should be in a simple, single, easy to use app that makes it for site selectors so they don't have to go digging around on multiple pages on their website. Okay, I'm gonna hand it back to Melanie.
Okay. So in summary, these are the 6 simple steps to drive engagement. And I would recommend you screenshot this and keep it very handy. You'll get all these materials later, but this is really the takeaway. Provide your property listings on your website. List especially industrial and distribution, focusing on sites and your largest buildings. Feature your best properties. Stage your best sites with 3D virtual buildings. Use links, QR codes, and analytics. And use a purpose-built GIS app that integrates everything. Did everyone get your screenshot? I'm going to move on. So if this has piqued your interest and you'd like to learn more about GIS WebTech and our Guru solutions, Guru Site Selection and Guru Ecosystem, we invite you to visit our website at giswebtech.com. We also invite you to our first annual Economic Development Tech Summit, which will be next November in Alpharetta, Georgia. So you can learn more by visiting our website, as I said, and all of the information's there, or you can reach out to me or Ron anytime. I think we're going to be doing a Q&A. Michael, would you like to? And I think we're going to go back to the previous slide just so you can take a look and it might jog some thoughts.
Sure. So if you have questions, stick them in the chat. I haven't seen any questions yet, but we've presented this a couple of times at different conferences, so I think it's helpful to revisit some of the most commonly asked questions, Ron, such as, are we as an organization going to continue this survey annually?
Yes, great point. I mentioned that at the beginning. If you came in late, you may have missed it, or you may have just kind of missed it when I said it. But
yeah,
this was the first ever survey of economic developers across North America and how they use property data. The results are extraordinarily interesting and useful. You saw most of the important points in today's discussion, but there are more. So if you would like to participate in the survey in the future, we would love to have you. The more data we get, the more valuable the survey will be. The incentive for you to participate is twofold. First, you get a free copy of the full report we will write every year. So those who participated this first year got a full copy of the complete report, all for free. No charge for any of this. And then the second factor in participation is as you accumulate these reports over the years, so assume you participate next year, the year after that, you're going to get an evolving set of data that will show how the market is changing over time. So that time series data will also be valuable. So simply go to our website, contact me or Melanie if you prefer, whatever is easier for you. You can sign up to participate there. So short answer is yes, we're going to do this every year. We're pretty excited.
Yeah, a question came in, staging. Is this easy to do, such as adding words, water, sewer, etc.?
Michael, would you like me to answer that? Would you like to have Kathy answer it? Whatever you prefer.
I'll answer that, but anyone else on the team, feel free to chime in. Great question. Thank you. It's easy to do. Yes, it is very easy to do. All of that staging is intuitive inside of Guru's admin panel. We recently added 8 additional 3D spec buildings, now we're up to 44. And what you can do inside of Gurus, you have a piece of property, you want to add a spec building or more, you just point and click, and then you can rotate the building on the piece of land that you think looks most attractive. And it's the same approach for adding water and sewer. We have a list of layers inside of Guru, and you can simply check a box and say you want to show those layers, and it's that intuitive and easy. It's designed where you don't need a GIS certificate or degree to be able to do this. It's as intuitive and easy as it could possibly be. And the same thing with featuring a property. With Guru, you can create your own featured labels rather than just saying feature. You could put industrial or other keywords that resonate with your prospects. You can simply create them in the admin panel and assign it to a property. It's just that simple. Kathy, Ron, anything you'd like to add to that?
I
Only
would just
that-
point out that
Go ahead, Kathy. Kathy, go
as
ahead,
far
please.
as infrastructure layers that were specifically referenced in the question, that most communities, municipalities have GIS teams that are creating layers rich with information that are important for economic development. And with GIS technologies such as ours, you can sync those layers directly into the technology so that the infrastructure that you have locally can be displayed very easily on your prime sites and properties.
Yeah, great point. So examples of local layers that your local county, city, and utility GIS departments already have that you can add with a couple of clicks would be zoning, parcels, land use planning, transit, sewer, wastewater. Those are all commonly integrated. You want a technology that allows you to do that, as Kathy said, on an automated basis. You don't want to be emailing shapefiles around. So make sure you look for that.
Yeah, and one thing to add to that, that data is always up to date. We're pointed from Guru. That data is from the source, is connected to the authoritative source. So it's always up to date in Guru. Never have to worry, is it stale or getting old? The answer is no, always up to date. Thank you for the question, Ben. Ron, another question that often has come up when we presented this is the analytics, the gold standard of user behavior interacting through 500,000 interactions. Will this also be continued along with the survey?
Another great question. So we aggregated this data set, over 500,000 interactions. To do that, we froze the source data. In other words, we had to freeze it at a point in time and then take that and begin to work with it. And we're partway through that process. As I mentioned, you'll see more from us, more insights from that aggregation, that analysis of those 500,000 interactions in the coming months. We will be doing this regularly going forward. And we're going to use that insight in sessions like this one to help the profession to communicate what really works to people. Until now, literally until this survey and then aggregated data, there was no analysis like this. There was no objective view of data like this. Instead, everybody was operating off intuition. Nothing wrong with intuition, but intuition is not always right. And so we focused on this year as 2 separate initiatives, the survey and the aggregated analysis, to try to provide real data with real hard evidence of what really works to make your property stand out and drive engagement. And so we're going to continue that as a theme in our business in the coming years. So the answer is yes, we're going to continue to do this kind of aggregated analysis. The numbers will get bigger. We'll be able to look at more interactions over time, and we'll see how trends change over time, just as we will with the survey being done every year. So great question.
I think that's it for questions.
Great. Well, I'd like to say thank you to all who attended. Please feel free to reach out to me, Melanie, any of our team at any time. I'd like to say thank you to the SEDC team. As always, they're a pleasure to work with, and thank you very much for having us today.